It is another 2023 Club Retrospective on this episode of One Soccer Today. It is Oliver Platt, Jordan Wilson, and Gareth Wheeler. I am Adam Jenkins. Today, as we continue to go through every Canadian professional football side, speaking of professional, those boys will eventually, I'd love to see you do your high five now that you're shifted over to the corner. We're talking CF Montreal today, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, missing out on the playoffs, some changes almost immediately after the season with Hernan Losada being relieved of his duties, and some numbers, as always, to give you the quick hitting facts to set up the show. 10th in the Eastern Conference, that is 20th overall. Close to the playoffs, but missing by 2 with a total of 41 points from 34 games and falling in the Canadian Championship to the Vancouver Whitecaps. The gentlemen have been asked to prepare a grade for the team. So if we can put them on the screen, I am going to ask for a big reveal at the same time. Everyone is going to hold up their letter grades. Gentlemen, yes, I didn't do it properly when we did TFC. I've got it ready this time. So on your marks, get set, grades. Let's see what we've got. We've got a C. That is a say with the accent.
I did the little 5 at the bottom.
See, it's the little 5. It's a circumflex.
Because it's the Montreal show.
Because that is the most French-looking Oliver Platts, I'll give you the first word to explain your grade.
Yeah, I mean, look, there were ups and downs through this season for CF Montreal, obviously, but when you look at the playoff line in MLS and the fact that, you know, it's not particularly a high bar to clear to make the playoffs, I don't think missing the playoffs for any team in this league can be considered a successful season. Maybe if you had a Canadian championship to say you'd won, you could, you know, upgrade this a little bit, but losing in the final to Vancouver, I think this has to go down. And obviously with Hernan Losada losing his job, that's the way the club seems to have taken it. This has to go down as an unsuccessful season. They had a lot to deal with the amount of players departing, with Wilfred Nancy departing. It was never going to be a straightforward year, but I still think they would have expected more than this. And, you know, some of the blame goes to Losada and the players, but I think the club has to take some as well, particularly for the way they started this year and the preparedness with which they entered the season.
For the record, accent CD before I get Madame Morissette in my DM saying that's not what that accent was. Gareth Wheeler, on to you.
My question is, what did we expect from CF Montreal to start the season? I think that I predicted them to finish 10th, and that's right where they finished. So it's a satisfactory season for me. You mentioned the player, the very good manager they lost in Wilfred Nancy. Also, Kone, Johnston, Mihailovic, Torres, Kamara, traded Miller. Like they lost a lot of significant pieces. And they were in position to go on and qualify for the playoffs up until the last 9 games. And that's when they capitulated. 1 win in their last 9 games, picking up 6 points over that span. They should have been a playoff side in what was a very poor Eastern Conference, just on the outside looking in. But guys, like, I'm not sure you could have expected much more, could you?
Isn't that the issue?
With roster management, there's a lot of things.
That's why I give them a C. It's just what I expected.
Jordan Wilson.
Yeah, C+ is also just me being. I still think C+ is satisfactory, right? Well, granted, that was a lot of my grades in university.
That sounds like you've had to talk yourself into that.
Yeah, C+. I'll take it. Well, it's just also in context. We just said it, right? A season where I didn't really expect much from CF Montreal, just with all the players that left. But then the players coming in as well. You have like Ian Herrera, Bryce Duke, George Campbell, all the players like a Kone or Mihailovic. Like, I don't have to go through all the names again. Wheels just did that. But I thought for a majority of the season they were decent. Like they were kicking, they were ticking in the right direction. It's just towards the end they couldn't get over the line. So yeah, average season. But what could you expect from a team that was rebuilding, a team that played some top football, attractive football last season? It's hard to go and do that same thing again with a whole different personnel. So C+.
Good at home, awful away. That's what average teams are. Like, that's what they were.
And Willie, like you say, they're a team that's rebuilding. I think that's what frustrates some supporters, is if they're rebuilding, they'd like to see a new brick added instead of just tearing it down and waiting. There's a pause to the rebuild that has got some frustration. There wasn't all bad. There were certainly some players who had fantastic years individually and maybe rose to different levels that either weren't expected of them or were ahead of schedule or finally arrived, however you want to take it. So that's the gents for their star performers. And Gareth, I'm going to give the first word to you.
Ooh, I'm going to go with the goalkeeper, Jonathan Sirois. The 22-year-old had an
Oh,
outstanding campaign. Club records with 11 clean sheets, another club record with 9 of them coming at home. Um, 97 saves on the season, tied for 5th with Petrovic of New England Revolution, a top goalkeeper. I thought he was outstanding. He was kind of um, in terms of the analytics, he was, in the conversation, the top like 5 or 6 in most of the most important categories as well. Played 33 games and really took a step up in terms of his career. And he was not the issue whatsoever. I think that he could very well put himself in the mix to be a future Canadian men's national team goalkeeper. And I think he deserves more of a look and more consideration based upon how he's progressed. He did in the Canadian Premier League. He's gone things about it the right way. So he's my top performer of the season. I know it's a goalkeeper, not an outfield player, but I do think that he was the one standout story above the rest. There's some other good players, but Sirois for me takes the cake.
Jordan Wilson.
yeah, Sierra is definitely a mention. Obviously, for me, he was in my top 2, but I'm going to go another direction with Mathieu Chouanière with his 5
XL.
goals, 2 assists. Try my best, Jenko. And 28 games played. Like, this is a guy who, for me, was the heartbeat in many moments for this midfield, right? And stepped up in big ways. Also think like playing 80% of the minutes, that shows that you're also consistent and a guy that you could be relied upon. And then just the roles, like it was him tracking back, it was him creating, it was him just getting and connecting in between the lines, and then showing up in big games. I think he's done that throughout the season. This one especially, playing Toronto FC in the Cup. But phenomenal player. This is a big boost for him and his season, and I think he will just be ingrained in that club now.
Oliver Platt.
Yeah, the right 2 choices. I will lean Chouanière just over Sirois, but I think those 2 players were the big positives and emblematic of the big positive, I think, in CF Montreal's season, which is that this team, this club, is really establishing a base of young players from Quebec, from elsewhere in Canada, who are coming into the first team, and they are succeeding. And that has not been easy for other MLS clubs, particularly in Canada. And CF Montreal seems to have a real foundation of being able to develop players through their academy, pick up players from the CPL, from the local area as well in Ligue 1 Quebec, and bringing these players to the MLS level, and they're thriving, and it's giving them, I think, a really solid foundation to build from going into next season.
Just another couple of quick shout outs. I thought that Campbell really showed something this team. I'm excited to see more of Saliba going forward. And Opoku was a very good pickup in season as well. I think that that's a type of move that makes a whole lot of sense for Montreal, and a good one at that.
Always a jarring transition when we give flowers and sing praise, and then I say, okay, gentlemen, now who disappointed you the most? Straight after that conversation. Jordan Wilson, from your satisfactory C+ to maybe a player that might be receiving a letter D grade or even an F, who is your biggest disappointment of the season?
Yeah, I'm not going to give anyone an F. I think I will say, when you look at a team, right, you want defenders to defend and you want strikers to score. So I think for Kyoto, Ibrahim just to have 3 goals, and 4 also to have 4 goals for the season. For me, I'm just going on the attackers. I know how you play is a huge part of if you're going to score, but you needed a Kyoto to step out. I know he was injured for a good part of the season, but they needed CF Montreal, someone to put the ball in the net, someone to be a guy to say, I'm going to do it week in and week out. They didn't really have that. So I guess my disappointment, it's not an F, but I am disappointed in terms of a guy like Kyoto or for not stepping up and scoring more goals for the club.
That's very fair. It doesn't necessarily have to be a who is your biggest disappointment, but what was your biggest disappointment, Gareth?
CF Montreal not spending to bring in adequate replacements for the players they lost. In Ismail Kone, they made about 8 to 10 million euro. Alistair Johnston, 5 million. I know that 10% of that went to the player, but still a nice fee. Mihailovic, around $6 million. And they didn't sign one new designated player to the team. They really just spent on future players or players they think could maybe be part of the system. What do you expect? Again, what do you expect? Like, is CF Montreal serious about being a contending team in this league? because what they were able to do the season before under Wilfred Nancy, it was like miracle work. And that's why Nancy is one of the best managers, if not the best in all of Major League Soccer, in my opinion. That cannot be the expectation. I thought Losada, honestly, I think he's a really good on-field manager, but clearly has issues with players, the way that he deals with them off the field, and that continues to be his Achilles heel. It's kind of disappointing that he's out because I think that he maximized and got the most out of a limited team. So I'd say their net spend, they got to spend money if you want to compete in this MLS 3.0, 4.0, or wherever we're at right now. And they're not spending. That's the biggest disappointment.
Ollie, do you agree?
I do. I had two statistics that were my biggest disappointments of the season. The first one was they lost 6 of the first 7 games. It was a team that wasn't ready to start the season. And I think that goes back to what Wheels has been talking about, the investment in the team in the offseason to replace the players that had departed. I understand you're in a rebuilding situation, but this isn't the NBA where you have to wait for 3 drafts to find new players. That there's a whole world of players out there. Go and sign some. You know, they had all kinds of budget flexibility with the players they'd sold, the open DP spots, and they just didn't really seem to use it as aggressively as I think the fans have a right to expect to be ready for the start of the year. And then the other one is 2 wins, 2 draws, and 13 losses on the roads. There are a lot of teams in MLS that are bad on the roads, but Montreal were right up there with the worst of them. And I think that played a big part when you listen to some of the comments that were made at the end of the season in the decision to go for a new coach next year.
Much like their primary blue home shirts, not ready to start the season, but my goodness, were they beautiful when they finally arrived this season. Looking ahead to 2024, Gareth, I think you outlined pretty well. You think if they don't spend, the expectation might be a C again. So interested to see how you take this question, your outlook for the upcoming 2024 season.
I'm allowed to say who the hell knows? No. Need to get their manager first. I mean, it's crucial that they get the right hire. I would look to the Canadian Premier League for a potential manager or two who have been rumored to be taking steps up elsewhere. I'm not sure how much the English versus French language comes into that conversation or debate, but they need to get the next manager, someone that can work with young players, because clearly that's the way that they've gone. Then we'll see what their commitment is to adding to the squad in terms of investing serious dollars in adding much needed quality to keep up. So those are the two things. Without knowing what, as of right now, what those two areas look like, I think it's very much the same. Development, keep your fingers crossed, a lot of Canadians, and hope that everything goes right. Last year, the injuries to Toy and Kyoto left very little punch in attack. They need some more reliable attacking players. Your top goal scorer can't be 5, and you go on to be a serious team in Major League Soccer. That just cannot be the case.
And a reminder with these evergreen shows, we are taping this early, so it's highly possible that managerial announcement comes anytime and ruins the 15 minutes we put together for you today. But Gareth, I agree, that's a pretty big first step. Jordan Wilson, your expectations for 24?
Yeah, similar to Wheeler's. We've been hanging out a lot, so we're rubbing off on each other, or he's rubbing off on me. But a manager coming in that takes care of man management, takes care of the group. I think that with CF Montreal, there's no question that their pipeline, their youth are talented. I think you need someone that brings them in the right way, and someone that connects like the biggest star on the team, Wanyama, getting everyone connected, and going in the right direction. I think that's imperative. But yeah, we just don't know what to expect going into a season in terms of if you're really willing to spend and really bolster that team. But I would like to see just someone coming in and taking the reins, calling the shots on the pitch and in the locker room. I think let management deal with management, but someone that is just all about getting the best out of their players. And I think that area, that Montreal fan base, would really appreciate that as well.
Final moments of the show and the final word to Oliver Platt.
I'm optimistic about this team, honestly, but it's about their own willingness to kind of take the foundation they've built and be aggressive in adding to it. Like, they have a really nice core of young Canadian players who have come through. We've already talked about. Beyond that as well, they have more domestic players like Duke, like Campbell, players like that, Herrera, that they've kind of established that give them that solid base. It's just about adding the top talent and the willingness to do that. And that doesn't have to be $5, $6, $7 million players. It's like $1.5 million players in terms of salary. are they going to go out and get those guys to really help the core that they've built? If they do, I think they could be quite good.